Oh, do we have all our panelists here, D'Andrea? Looks like.
I don't see, is Jeff on?
Oh.
I don't see Jeff. And that's, other than that, I see everybody else. And I want to give Jeff a few minutes to get on because he's right after me in terms of the presentation. I don't see my little clock down at the bottom, so it's hard to see exactly what time it is.
Joel.
Yes.
Just making sure you can hear me. All right. I was
good.
having a little difficulty here with this headset this morning.
All right, did Jeff get on yet? Do we know? I don't see him in the, well, I see an additional person in attendees. Oh, I see 7 now. But I can't see all the names, Joel.
Yeah, I'm looking at that now. I do not see Jeff unless he is one of the call-in users. Just make sure.
I'll text him right now and just see if I hear back. So.
We'll give him a second to text him and then we'll get started. I want to respect everybody's time allotment that they've given us today. All right, so my clock says 10:03. We will get started and hopefully Jeff will join us shortly. I see that we have quite a few participants as well as our members of the task force. I'm D'Andrea Walker. I'm the Deputy Director for Public Works here in Baltimore County. I'm also the chair of this work group. I want to welcome all of you all and thank you for being willing to participate in an important initiative of County Executive Johnny Oles. Thank you for being willing to, this is not something that's going to take a month or so to deal with. It's going to take us a few months. You'll see throughout the presentation, it's going to take us a few months and a commitment to really be able to give the deliverables that we've been asked, that we've been tasked with. So it takes a commitment to be able to do this. And I thank you all for being willing to help us with this initiative. In my welcome remarks, I also want to ask that if you're not speaking, that you mute your phone. Just a couple of housekeeping issues. That you mute your phone and that we respect each other's time as we go through this. There is one adjustment on the agenda that I will make. The county executive will need to move his remarks up shortly after my presentation before 11 because he's now had another commitment that he has to get to right at 11. So hopefully he'll be joining us rather soon as opposed to further down on the agenda. So we will make an exception for that and move him up on the agenda, but I just wanted everyone to know that he'll probably be joining us sooner than later. So with that, I welcome all of you all and I thank you for your willingness to participate in this task force. The second item on our agenda today is our meeting introductions. As I said, I'm Deandra Walker, and I am the Deputy Director for Public Works here in Baltimore County. Joe, I cannot see the list of everybody, unfortunately. So how about we do it this way? Major J, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, I'm Major Jay Landsman, the commander of the Support Operations Division for the Baltimore County Police Department. And within that division, I have the Commercial Vehicle Safety Team, who are responsible for conducting specialized enforcement of laws relating to the safe operation of commercial vehicles in Baltimore County. So in addition to that role, I also serve as the Executive Officer to the Operations Bureau Chief, who has command responsibility for our 10 patrol precincts, in addition to my division. Each patrol precinct has their own dedicated traffic team. Usually the first point of contact with traffic complaints from the community is the precinct commander. A lot of times we'll get a phone call or an email from the community, and the captain will farm those complaints out to the traffic team to try to address at the precinct level. More common complaints regarding commercial vehicles are noise, vibrations, perceived violations of the no-through trucks over 3/4 ton, our frequent complaint roads, heard in the Dundalk precinct and Wilkins precinct, Dunhill Road, Wise Avenue, German Hill Road, North Point Road, Solars Point, and Benson Avenue. Some of the ways we go about attacking those complaints is through increased presence and enforcement, which the community, we get really good feedback on that because they see us out there, and the trucks start they see fewer trucks out there. However, a lot of the enforcement of the no-through truck signs, there is an exemption for deliveries. So tracking a vehicle through those roadways and seeing that they're actually violating the no-through truck signage is a bit tedious. So what we get probably more positive results are from the random DOT inspection sites, which are conducted by our commercial vehicle team. And that kind of sends a message out to the truckers, who then communicate with each other via radio, and they divert away from those residential areas. So that is, in a nutshell, who I am and what I'm bringing to the table here in terms of from the county's perspective, county police perspective, from the centralized commercial vehicle team, and what our precincts are dealing with. So,
Perfect. Thank you, Major. We appreciate it. Crystal, would you mind introducing yourself and your role that you're going to play on the committee?
Sure. Good morning. My name is Crystal Patterson. I'm an assistant county attorney with the Office of Law, and I will address any of the legal issues that may arise. So that's really my major role.
Okay, welcome, and thank you, Crystal.
Thank you.
Pete?
Good morning. I'm Pete Christkumis. I'm the acting director of the County Executive's Office of Community Engagement, where we have outreach coordinators designated to each district throughout Baltimore County that assist constituent issues. And this has been a hot topic over the years, as Major Landsman said, in District 7 and District 1. So we're actually the team that sends most of those complaints to Major Landsman.
Perfect, thank you. Matt Carpenter. Matt, you there?
Yep, just had problems getting off mute. Hi, it's Matt Carpenter from the Office of Budget and Finance. I'm the Chief of Budget and Administration. Probably the role would be most likely support and logistical, in a sense of either finding money for whatever we need to do, or then counting the money, or whatever on the backside of figuring out how the business enterprise solution, helping through that if there is a component here that needs to be run back through, say, finance for the case. But I would assume mostly a support role to help.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. We appreciate you being here. Louis, would you mind? And this is really important from the industry area. We were very strategic in making sure that we had the industry representatives here as well. Louis, would you mind introducing yourself?
Sure, I'm Louis Campion. I'm the president and CEO of the Maryland Motor Truck Association. So we're the state trade association representing the commercial trucking industry. And we have about 1,000 member companies that operate commercial vehicles, and they range from, one guy who gets in his truck every day up to the largest international companies in the world like UPS and FedEx. So thank you for having us.
And your feedback for this task force will be tremendously important. So I just wanted to put that out there. Jeff, were you able to join us? Okay, Jeff Farley is another representative. He represents Baltimore Industry Group as well. And we thought it would be important to get those folks who represent the truckers as a part of this conversation, so we can also understand from their perspective the importance of putting information like this in front of the county council and making decisions and recommendations. So we also have Jeff from the Baltimore.
Deandra, I see Jeff is actually on now. I don't know, but he's still muted. I'm not sure if he's having some trouble coming off of mute. So, but he is on.
Okay, there we go. Am I unmuted?
Unmute.
Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties on my end. Thank you for having me. My name is Jeff Fraley. I own and operate a small waste management business in and around the city of Baltimore. I'm currently the chairman of the Baltimore Industrial Group, which is a business group in Baltimore City that represents an array of businesses from smaller companies like myself all the way up to your Domino's Sugars and your Ruckert terminals. A lot of our businesses are major haulers and freight carriers through Baltimore City and the state of Maryland. And we worked with Louis and the Maryland Motor Truck for quite some time. And we're actually one of the stakeholders in developing the truck route in Baltimore City. So I do have a lot of experience in the last 10 years with work that is exactly in line with what we're discussing today.
Perfect. We appreciate you being here and willing to assist us with this effort. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Another important part of making sure that this is having community input. We have community representatives from District 1 and District 7. John, would you mind giving us a little bit of your background?
Sure. My name is John Merson. I've been a resident of Benson Avenue here in Arbutus for almost 70 years. And I've been fighting the through truck traffic for probably most of that, probably 40 years. So I'm just here to put my input in for District 1.
Perfect. It will be valuable, and we appreciate you being here today. And then, last but not least, Ron from District 7. Would you mind introducing yourself? I know I saw Ron on.
Yeah, he's unmuted, but I'm not sure.
Let me text him in the chat and see if maybe. Technical difficulties, that happens. Okay, we cannot hear Ron. We'll take a point of privilege and come back to Ron if we can get past the technical difficulties with him. I did send him a chat and hopefully maybe he can hang up. Ron, if you could hang up and call back in. Uh-oh, sorry, here we go. Sorry, but I cannot get on but I could hear you. Okay. All right, Ron, if you could hang up and call back in, maybe that, maybe that'll help. Maybe there was just a disconnect as it relates to your speakers or something. So if you can hang up and call back in, that would be helpful because we would love to hear from you. So we'll give Ron a few minutes to do that. And we'll move on to the presentation from the overview of why we're here today. And it'll give you a nice background of our charge that's in front of us as well. All right. So this is, of course, the Baltimore County Residential Truck Traffic Work Group. I appreciate you all for being here once again. As you can see, we were very strategic in making sure that we had a wide representation so that we could be fully immersed in making sure that we put before the county council the things that they've asked us to, and it was a thought out process. So that it was important to make sure that we had community representation as well as industry representation. And then we brought the people from the county around the table as well. So I appreciate you all's introductions and making sure that we understand the full depth of what we're here for, and we had the right people at the table to have that discussion. We'll move to the next slide. So why are we here today, right? We're here to serve our constituents. For several years, neighborhoods in Southwest and Southeast Baltimore County had dealt with high volumes of the truck traffic on local roadways. Hence why we have District 1 and District 7 represented by our community. Large truck traffic on unauthorized roads to avoid tolls or to save time, and local communities face certain quality of life issues as a consequence of these large trucks on those roads. Constituents are looking to Baltimore County for an answer to this problem. And rightly so, addressing quality of life issues like those that stem from unauthorized residential truck traffic are the bread and butter of local government. County Executive Johnny O has received constituent feedback on this matter dating back to his time in the House of Delegates, and has made it clear his expectation that Baltimore County government find a solution. Hence, the government officials, workers that you also have on this call to make sure we come up with those solutions. We are also here to be good partners. Every action has a consequence. And Baltimore County is very mindful of the fact that action taken on this matter will not just affect the lives of constituents, but also the vehicle operators that drive in and around Baltimore County. The commercial trucking industry is an essential part of the American economy and one that many other industries depend on for support on a daily basis. As of 2018, approximately 1 in 20 jobs in Maryland were affiliated with the commercial trucking industry, and many trucking companies located in Maryland are small and locally owned businesses. Over the last year, representatives of this industry have been very willing to work with Baltimore County on the issues of residential truck traffic. This work group was born out of a compromise and cooperation representatives who have made it very clear that they are here to be a part of the solution. All parties involved recognize that this is not a zero-sum game situation. And this group of stakeholders, community members, industry representatives, and county employees are here to make sure we come away with a program that's implemented in a manner that addresses constituent concerns without creating an undue burden on vehicle operators. And that brings us to the final reason we are here today. We're here to make good policy. We all know bad policy is easier to make than good policy. It would be easy to make decisions hastily without adequate input from both community members and industry representatives. It would be easy to create a system that is punitive, inefficient, and ineffective, and then turn a blind eye to any unintended consequences. But good governance is not about doing what is easy. It is about doing the work to create a good policy. This work group has been given the time and resources to do this right. And this membership brings together the broad level of experience needed to do just that. We will get out of the process what we put into it. Let's go to the next slide. So I'm sure most of us know how we got here in a general sense, but we just wanted to give some background as well. So Baltimore City historically faced similar issues with the truck industry in residential areas. Baltimore City's Department of Transportation and the trucking industry representatives coordinated to review the city's truck route system and updated the map of authorized truck routes some time ago. Following this review, legislation was passed by the General Assembly during its 2012 legislative session that enabled Baltimore City to implement a program to install vehicle height monitoring systems, which issued citations to different vehicles of a specific height traveling on authorized roads. Baltimore City's resulting commercial vehicle height monitoring system program, a program that will be thoroughly analyzed by this group during future meetings. Hopefully at the next meeting, we'll do a presentation on theirs. Offered Baltimore County a mechanism to curb residential truck traffic in the southeast and southwestern portions of the county. County Executive Johnny O made the passage of similar enabling legislation for Baltimore County one of his top priorities during the general legislative session of 2020 last year. Following those negotiations with trucking industry representatives, the legislation was then amended to include the establishment of this work group. And we were tasked with conducting research and making recommendations to the Baltimore County Council on the implementation of a vehicle height monitoring camera program. The legislation was also amended to push back the implementation date by 1 year, allowing this work group to conduct its work. Following these amendments, Senate Bill 41 was passed by the General Assembly. As we get further into the presentation, I'll break down Senate Bill 41 as well. We can go to the next slide. So, what's our timeline that's been issued to us? The work group has been given about a year to complete our task. We plan to meet approximately once a month. We actually plan to hold our second meeting in late October, and our third meeting is planned for early December. And we did this strictly to avoid the overlapping of the Thanksgiving holiday. The pacing of these meetings, of course, is not set in stone. I would be looking for feedback from you all over the first few months so that we can make sure that we actually can fulfill the scope of the work that's in front of us. We also want to build a consensus with this group. So even though we've laid out some ideas about meeting dates, it's open to the committee. We were just doing some pre-work to look forward, understanding what's before us. So we've been asked to file a preliminary report by March 31st and a final report by August 31st. The final report should include detailed recommendations on how Baltimore County should implement its vehicle height monitoring system program. And those recommendations will be used to craft the legislation to be voted on by the Baltimore County Council. The preliminary report will summarize the work group activities and findings to date. Those deliverables that will be expected from the work group, which I will go over again later in this presentation, will not need to be finalized until the August report. However, we have outlined a plan to split those deliverables into 2 groups so that we can meet the final date of August 31st and so that we can get some work included between now and March 31st. And those will be the focus of our efforts from April 2021 through August 2021 as well. Our goal is to have draft recommendations on the first group of deliverables included in the preliminary report come March. So later in the presentation, you'll see how we broke down the 3 different tasks associated with it and what we're going to present in March. So let's talk about Senate Bill 41 and what it calls for, and what it actually says about the work group. So one of the things is that we were fortunate that Senate Bill 41 provided very specific items that informs our goals as a work group. On this slide, the relevant portion of the first section of the legislation, Roman numeral 1, you can see it tasks us with assisting Baltimore County in 3 things: evaluating the existing truck routes, identifying areas for the vehicle height monitoring enforcement, and evaluating the existing signage, and deciding where those that signage can be improved. Under Roman numeral 2, it requires that the legislation will eventually go before county council must include a limit on the number of vehicle height monitoring systems that the county will utilize. The work group will therefore include a suggested limit on the number of cameras as a part of our recommendations. And also included will be a recommendation on the type of vehicles that should be excluded from the enforcement of the height restrictions by the monitoring systems. And that's referenced in our final sentence on this slide. All right, so in section 2 of Senate Bill 41, the legislation also asks that the work group make recommendations to the county council on 4 different items: developing a map of height restricted roads, developing and implementing a process for the vehicle owner to easily contest the erroneous issued citations without the necessary of a court hearing, developing a process for the owner of a vehicle to identify and transfer the liability, and exempting certain type of vehicles from enforcement by a vehicle monitoring system. All right, so what are we going to undertake first, right? So these 2 sections have allowed us to create a list of deliverables. We've divided those deliverables into 3 policy work areas. As you can see, we plan to address the items under the first policy area, the route review and map creation, during the first half of our work. Let me briefly run down that list for you. Comprehensively review the existing truck routes that was prescribed in the bill. We need to identify the main areas of concern in their relation to the existing truck routes. And that process in particular, we're going to start at the very next meeting. And we need to identify the type of streets that should be considered as primary routes and local trucking routes and restricted routes. One of the things we noticed is that Baltimore City's route map included 3 types of routes. And again, I'll do a presentation on Baltimore City's rollout at the next meeting to kind of help us formalize this. They talked about 3 primary routes. It was they talked about 3 types of routes. It was primary routes, the local trucking routes, not to pass through routes, and restricted routes. This group will be making important determinations on the types of streets and locations that belong within those 3 type of categories. We also need to create a map that can be used by the vehicle operators in real times. We recognize that the vehicle operators need to be provided information on where it is and isn't legal for them to be traveling. While we don't anticipate having that system up and running by March, we do hope to have a map completed and a plan in place to ultimately make it more than just a static map. So it's a lot of work to do that, but we do hope to be able to put something before council when we do deliver this. We're also tasked with developing a plan to evaluate existing signage and make the necessary adjustments. So being in Department of Public Works, I've already asked the members of the department here to start to gather that information so that we could start to discuss that information as well and be able to deliver on this item. And hopefully we'll be able to have that discussion at the next meeting as well. We've done some pre-planning to be able to bring that to the committee. We will also recommend certain type of vehicles that should be exempt from enforcement by a vehicle height monitoring system. So there's certain vehicles that legitimately we've done on some of the research we've done, certain vehicles have legitimate business in residential areas. And some of those trucks will probably be trash or recycling vehicles or package delivery vehicles. We need to be very clear in the legislation about, well, in our recommendation about what vehicles those are so that they could be exempt from this process. And then finally, we'll have the recommendations to make on the number of vehicle height monitoring cameras the county should utilize and where they should be placed. And that's where Major will come into play with helping us with some of those things as well as Public Works. All right, so those are some of the deliverables. And then the deliverables for August. The back half of our work is on the other two policy areas, the cameras and the county citation process. We will, of course, be making recommendation on a number of vehicle height monitoring cameras that the county should utilize and where they should be. These items are pretty self-explanatory, but they're very central pieces to the recommendations that we need to put forth to the county council. So we do need to have a detailed discussion about the cameras and where they should be. We'll also be focusing on how the county issues the citations and how those that receive those citations interact with the county. It was well known that there needs to be a process where people have a right to come back and say why they should not have received that citation. So we must first develop the citation process itself. And this work will be aided by the county's existing programs that manage the red light camera program and the speed cameras. And then we must develop a dispute resolution process so that the operators can easily contest any erroneous issue citation. Because again, there's a significant number of vehicles that will be flagged by the vehicle height monitoring cameras that should not be receiving the citation. So we want to have a process in place where they can have a dispute resolution to bring before to say, I was legitimately supposed to be in that area. Okay, the next item falls within the umbrella of the dispute resolution system. So we'll be developing a pre-clearance application for all vehicles from a specific company to be exempt from citations. This could be appropriate for companies such as FedEx and UPS. And it will be up to this work group to determine the details of that system, which will help save an erroneous amount of work for both those that receive the citations and the county. So we don't want to issue citations that shouldn't be issued again when we know that these vehicles like FedEx trucks should be on certain locations, at certain locations. And finally, we will be asked to develop a process to transfer the liability to operators of leased or rented vehicles. Just as car rental companies will not accept the liability for a citation from a speeding camera or red light camera, companies that lease or rent commercial trucking vehicles will not want to accept the liability for vehicle height monitoring infraction. We know that it is very important. Those in the commercial trucking industry and the working group will be analyzing how to build a liability transfer option into the county citation process. So as you can see, we taken some time to break down the deliverables based on the March preliminary report versus the August final report. And we tried to break it down so that it's simplified on the tasks that we need to put forward and to work on. So it's a heavy lift, but it's a lift that we can do, and we appreciate you all being a part of the process and helping us to do this. So that gives you an overview of what we've been tasked to do as a work group. Any questions or concerns? It was a lot of information. We'll share the presentation with you as well so that you can digest it, but we wanted to make sure that you understood what our charge was in this effort.
Hey, D'Andrea, it's Jeff Fraley. I have a quick question.
Okay.
I got into the meeting late. Again, I apologize. Are there any work group members from the Baltimore County Transportation Unit?
I represent that unit.
Okay.
Transportation specifically falls under me here
All right.
as a deputy director, and I'm pulling a lot of information from the traffic engineering area to help with
Okay.
the process. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then secondly, just a quick note. Do you know who you want to choose to present on behalf of Baltimore City in the future meetings?
I think that's an open discussion for us as a task force. I did recommend that we get the presentation on Baltimore City at the next meeting because I think that'll help facilitate and scope what we should and should not do moving forward.
I agree. Would you mind if I put forth a recommendation via email for whom a participant on behalf of Baltimore City might be?
A participant to do a presentation?
Correct. Whether they lead it or act as a support role, I think they'd be a great benefit to what we're trying to accomplish as a team.
Okay, I mean, yeah, sure, you could put the recommendation forward. I think that they should. We'll see what the recommendation is. I want to, of course, keep the work group members to the work group members, but any presentations that would help us come up with the recommendations that we should have as this work group, we're willing to entertain.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. Anybody else have any questions or feedback on the presentation? Hearing none, before we move forward, I want to give Jeff an opportunity to. No, you did get an opportunity to introduce yourself once
I did. Thank you.
Get on, so we didn't need to cover that. So hearing no feedback on the presentation and the overview, I'm sure we're going to have some as we go through this, and there was a lot to digest in terms of that overview. But I want to take a point of privilege here and pause and ask Joel, has an executive able to join us?
I think the county executive just got on a second ago.
Come on, Joel.
Hello, Mr. C. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. We appreciate you taking time out to bring us remarks this morning. I have the committee on the line. We just did an overview presentation. I'm not sure if you got a chance to hear that part, but we wanted to take a point of privilege here and allow you to bring remarks to the committee.
Yeah, thanks, D'Andrea, and apologies to everyone for my tardiness. I was hoping to catch that overview, but been running a few minutes late today. But D'Andrea, thank you for welcoming me and for all the work that you're doing, putting this work group into action, as well as to all the members of the team who've been assisting you in that effort. You have been an outstanding addition to Public Works team since joining us earlier in the year, and really appreciate you heading up this effort. And thanks to all of you as members of the work group for dedicating your time and your expertise to help us address this critical quality of life issue, but doing it the right way. As I'm sure D'Andrea mentioned earlier, concerns about residential truck traffic have been on my radar for a very long time. I've been hearing from constituents on this issue dating back to when I was in the House of Delegates when I was 23 and didn't have gray hair. But I've lived alongside it with my neighbors on the east side and continue to hear it today as county executive through Pete Kumis in our Office of Community Engagement, through Public Works, and through others. We've been pushing for some solutions, as I know have our civic and community leaders. The same challenges I experienced representing the east side of Baltimore County, I know are also true in southwest Baltimore County. It's been quite a mountain to climb, but at this point, it feels like this first meeting feels like we've finally reached a point where a summit's in sight. And again, I appreciate everyone who's helped us to get to this point, just as I appreciate those who are helping us climb the rest of the ways. One of the things I love about being county executive is that in local government, we get to work on issues like this. And with no disrespect to our federal partners, many people don't currently see government as a place where all parties, political or otherwise, can come together, drill down into the details of a problem, and actually come together to collaboratively find a solution. But I know that's what's going to happen with this group. It's what's happened with other stakeholders. And this is exactly the kind of stakeholder-driven process that we are excited about to use in pursuit of a solution. We know the outline of a resolution is there. We know that vehicle height monitoring cameras will help curb truck traffic in communities where they've had that issue for years. But we want to do it relying on the input and expertise of this work group to ensure that the program that's developed is actually effective in addressing the problem while not being an undue burden on vehicle operators. Many of the trade organizations on this work group are also members of our community, and we owe it to you all to be fair, ensure that the rules that we have are well defined, and the resources are provided to inform you and your colleagues of the details. Before we get to wrapping, just a few more thank yous. I want to thank the Maryland General Assembly for passing the legislation that enabled this conversation, and for members of the Baltimore County House delegation and Senate delegation that got it through. A special shout out to Senator Lamb, the sponsor of the Senate bill, and Delegate Eric Ebersol, who did it in the House. I made it clear that passage of this legislation was one of my top priorities. They and other members enthusiastically partnered with us to make it happen. I also want to thank industry representatives who made it clear as part of the session they wanted to be part of the solution, including fleshing out details of this work group. And when those provisions were amended to the bill, they literally sat side by side with the bill sponsors and members of my team to testify in their support of the legislation. So thank you. It really represents, I think, the legislative process at its best, compromise and collaboration in pursuit of serving our constituents, because that's what this is about, serving our shared constituents. So, and those constituents have a role to play as well. I encourage those who've been affected to take part in the community survey that will be posted later on. And we also will have an announcement on Baltimore County social media accounts. Their input, like yours, is valuable to this work as it recommends Baltimore County's vehicle height monitoring system program. That's a mouthful. But again, I want to just close by expressing my gratitude to all the work group members for your time today. I'm excited to be included on the agenda for this first meeting. Very much look forward to seeing the work that you come up with through the rest of your meetings. You are in great hands with Joel, DeAndrea, and other team members from Baltimore County. Thank you again for serving, and really excited to have this opportunity to partner with all of you to move our county forward.
Mr. C, we appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to bring us remarks today. We understand the importance and that this was a top legislative priority for you in the last session, and we are tasked with delivering a report, a preliminary one in March and a final one in August, and we are well underway to make sure that happens.
Awesome. I apologize in advance. I can stay for about 10 more minutes and I have to hop to my next, but I won't be a hindrance. I'll just be an observant otherwise, but really appreciate everyone on the team here and the work group for being part of this. Thanks again. Thanks, Andrea.
Thank you. So with that being said, we've gotten an overview of the charge that's put in front of the work group. We'll now have a presentation from the industry perspective. Would you be willing to give us that perspective?
Sure, and I appreciate, again, being part of the work group. Yeah, I previously mentioned Lewis Campion with the Maryland Motor Truck Association with 1,000+ members. Again, all sizes of trucking companies, right? From one guy who gets in his truck every day to UPS and FedEx. And Jeff Fraley, actually, from the Baltimore Industrial Group, is also a member of our association as well. And I appreciate Jeff participating, given his experience also with Baltimore City, where we work together on that effort. And I'll just state right up front, right, that we want to address this problem. We don't want trucks illegally traveling on residential streets. It certainly creates a safety concern, a quality of life concern, and it gives the industry a black eye, right? Because you can have a very small percentage of trucks actually operating in residential area, but it really paints the entire industry with a very broad brush that we certainly want to avoid. You know, for example, easiest example, I know Dundalk, right? You should never have a truck pulling a container coming through your residential area. That clearly is not a local delivery and is clearly a cut-through circumstance. But there are circumstances, and DeAndrea cited some of them, where truck use of a residential street is legal. And that is because every route becomes a legal route if you do have to use it to make a pickup or delivery. And DeAndrea cited some of those most common types of examples, right? Trash trucks, obviously e-commerce, UPS, FedEx, household goods moving companies, certainly home heating, fuel, furniture delivery. Those types of activities are legitimate. And, but our goal is to really come away with a program that is balanced, that penalizes the illegal activity, right? The illegal route use, and that recognizes that those legal activities do exist, that they need to be accounted for. And we don't want to put such a burden on those legal business activities that we essentially inundate them and paralyze them from being able to do business because they're spending all their time having to demonstrate that they were legally able to be in a particular area. And we think we can accomplish that. We did support this technology. Both Jeff and I sat in a number of meetings in Baltimore City, going quadrant by quadrant and reviewing route by route, trying to identify what routes were most important to the industry and what routes should be restricted in developing their map. That said, we did walk away from that process with some expectations and commitments from the city that never really saw themselves through to fruition, particularly around their signage, inventorying and updating that signage, around mapping, and around getting those maps up to the appropriate GPS providers, because no one is walking around in a truck with a paper map nowadays, right? So we really need good communication to drivers. And I recognize that some drivers are going to ignore that communication, and that's the bad actor that we want to try and address with these cameras, certainly. And the other challenge with Baltimore City in our experience is that there were a tremendous number of false positives. The abatement rate was very high in terms of the number of citations or photos that had to be dismissed. And so, how do we make that a little bit more seamless in Baltimore County, having had that experience? I think we have some ideas about how to address those challenges. I think DeAndrea mentioned several of those, and they're in the legislation, right? It all starts with a really focused identification of those problem areas. I know we've got communities on that have that experience and can identify those areas, with developing that map of legal routes that should be used to the greatest extent possible by trucking companies. And then, procedures that are very clear, which is not the case in Baltimore City, around pre-clearing some of those certain types of activities that have a legitimate need to be in a neighborhood. I also think there are some other opportunities beyond cameras that we can take, even in advance of the camera systems, understanding that we're moving very aggressively, but we're still a year away even from the effective date. And that, effort we want to be a part of with regards to outreach and education in those targeted areas, whether that be pull a zip code list of every trucking company that we have, amongst our membership, in particular jurisdictions where you have challenges, and can we blast that information out to them, just reminding them of the restrictions and the challenges. We can also utilize the port to assist with that, because we know that Dundalk is typically an area that involves a lot of port traffic. So all that said, we look forward to working with the work group and developing a solution that can address this problem. We want this problem to go away, right? And Jeff, I know, wants this problem to go away. We'd all like to see this issue addressed so that we don't have to continue to talk about this. So with that, I don't know if Jeff has anything he wants to add. We didn't pre-script anything in advance, so I'll just leave it to Jeff.
Thanks, Louis. And team, I'm here to help facilitate in any fashion that I can along the way. Louis is going to be your expert again. He is the president of the Maryland Motor Truck Association. He's got vast experience. He's got broad perspective from carriers like FedEx all the way down to folks like me with only 5 or 7 trucks. So Louis is a great asset. I'm serving in any support role in which I can. Once we get into these details, I can describe in great detail the process that we went through in Baltimore City, some of the things that I feel are positive that we can build on, and maybe some of the pitfalls that we can perhaps avoid along the way. So I really appreciate being involved with the work group, and I'll do my best to give us a nice balanced approach and a positive result.
Hey, DeAndrea, can I add one other thing, actually, because Jeff has sort of understated his value. I'm an office worker. I run an association. Jeff actually runs a trucking company and has a commercial driver's license and has driven a truck. So I don't want to overlook that value as someone who has true hands-on experience that I don't have. So let's make sure that we recognize that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Work group members, you have any questions, feedback, more things that you may want to know from the industry perspective? Hearing none, Louis, we do, and I one of the things that stood out about what you said for me is the good communication between the city and the trucking industry, and the outreach to the communities and to the trucking industry. And I think the outreach is where Pete is going to play a huge role in making sure we get the message out to the community the way we should get it out, and that communication is going to be vital in terms of these being good recommendations, and then also carrying out, what we agree to after it's been implemented will also be really important in terms for this effort to be successful. So I heard some of those things, I noticed some of those things, and we'll carry them forward as we have these discussions moving forward so that we can make sure that we address those things as we're moving forward with the work group. So we appreciate that perspective.
No, thank you very much. And I mean, I'll just make one observation right off the bat relative to inclusion, which is with Baltimore City, I do not recall us actually having law enforcement participate. And that's a meaningful, contributor to this entire discussion. So I'm really glad that, we have the major on as part of this group as well. That really wasn't part of the communication and process, as I recall, with Baltimore City. So we look forward to that. And even as it pertains to outreach, I have spoken to a number of community associations in Baltimore City that have experienced high volumes of truck traffic, even since the cameras have been installed. And I can certainly make that similar commitment to the neighborhoods that are, participating in this group, to just get an understanding of what they're seeing from a truck traffic standpoint. A great example in Violetville, UPS is right near there. And I spoke to Violetville about a year ago, and they indicated they were getting a lot of UPS cut through traffic that clearly was not making deliveries in their neighborhood, and UPS is on our board. And so we immediately reached out to them, and they put out a blast notice, and that changed very rapidly. So, those types of things we want to assist with, regardless of whether there's electronic enforcement in that area. So,
wow.
We look forward to kind of ironing out the route selection, and I like the idea of putting the areas in the GPS so the drivers know exactly where the areas are, but also the education part of it goes the other way as well. Posting what is legal, what's illegal, on the website, so that the communities can reference and take a look at what if they see something and they think might be a violation, they can kind of get an explanation, maybe ahead of time, and figure out that, okay, this is legitimate activity. This is something needs to be enforced. So yeah, we look forward to being part of this. Appreciate it.
Perfect. And Louis, you did a good toss to the community perspective. So we have John on our work group John, would you mind giving us a overview or a presentation from the community perspective?
Sure. The only thing I can really add is the fact that about 2 weeks ago, on a 5 to 7 p.m. timeline, I sat in front of my house and I counted the trucks. The trucks it was 33 trucks came past my house in 2 hours with dual rear wheels. So they are definitely overweight, oversized. 19 of those were UPS trucks coming home. My area is about a quarter of a mile long, so you can see from one end to the other, and nobody made a stop in that quarter of a mile. They all cut through. It was 19 UPS trucks out of 33. Now this morning, I sat and watched the traffic from 6 to 7. I had 17 trucks come through. And from 7 to 8, I had 51 trucks come through. Now that wasn't counting pickup trucks or vans with ladder racks or any of that. It was just the Sprinter vans are bigger. So it was all just tall trucks, 51 trucks today, 7 to 8. Other than that, that's about all I have to add at this point.
Can I jump in on there, Andrea, actually?
Sure, Louis.
Just so actually, I'd love to communicate with John offline in terms of getting his exact streets and the like, because that's something that, at least with regards to the UPS piece, we could jump in very quickly on that. And then talk with you also about, what other type of activity you're seeing, and even maybe part of the work group discussion, right? That if you are having issues with trucks cutting through, what information we need to be able to reach out and, and identify a company. UPS is very easy, but that's not always the case, certainly. And I know, like, Violetville sends me pictures when they see a truck cutting through now and the like, and what kind of identifying information would be helpful for us and for law enforcement either on as well. But I'd love to address the UPS issue as fast as possible, John. So
Sure. Anytime you want to talk, we can definitely talk. I know I have trucks coming through from US Mail all the way down to UPS. And tractor trailers, roll-off trucks. And I know they're, like you said, roll-off trucks are very seldom delivering dumpsters in the area. And you can watch them for a quarter of a mile. You can see from one end to the other, and they're not stopping.
DeAndrea, if I may, I want to touch on what John was speaking of, because I'm very familiar with the Southwest side and Benson Avenue, working over there for 8 years, doing constituent service, and as well as Wise Avenue on the east side. And there is no exaggeration in Mr. Merson's numbers. We have worked with the outreach officers out of Precinct 1. We have worked with their safe truck, safety truck teams, and those numbers aren't exaggeration. I will say candidly, my father-in-law is is a big boss of a trucking company that sits right pretty much across the street from UPS. And I've had to call him, and it just doesn't stop. And I think that, you know, with their experience in Halthorpe, which is the stretch of road that on Benson Avenue, Mr. Merson's referring to, it's a cut through to 695, and it's easy for him to get off and come right up Benson Avenue. And this isn't something that has occurred over the last year, 2, 5, 8. I mean, this has been going on for well over a decade that I can remember. So if anyone on this work group can, you know, talk to the owners or the leaderships of these companies that sit right there on that city county line, it would be a huge help, because there are signs posted, and instead of them coming out and going to Caton Avenue to jump on 95 or down Joe Avenue to Caton Avenue to jump on 695 to Washington Boulevard, they're coming through this area that majority of it is residential. And just last week I was in a community meeting, and got my lunch handed to me because lady saying that her house is rattling, and you know, she's got cracks in her foundation, and she's been fighting this for years. So I mean, any help, Lewis, that you can provide would truly be a, you know, an asset, you know, down there in some of these community associations, and as well on the west side, on the east side, because FedEx is another company that it's using a thorough way, you know, to just get back to the hub. They're not there making deliveries. They're using this road just to get back to their hub, and it causes a lot of issues with some of these older homes alongside these roads because they're so close to the road. So,
well, and now they have the location down at Trade Point Atlantic as well. And so if we could look at zip coding the locations in question, that'd be really helpful for me, because we could do some very targeted outreach to all of our members in those zip codes, certainly. And then we can, you know, similarly, I do want to follow up direct with UPS and give them some really specific details about the roads that are being used inappropriately so that we can get them to scale that back right away.
That'd be great.
And as a follow-up, something that we'll present probably at the next meeting, I did ask our traffic engineering group to geocode the complaints that we've had in District 1 and District 7 so that we can look at them as a committee. And so, Louis, that may also help you with that map that they're putting together now to show you where some of the areas of concern are as well. So we'll have that as a part of this task force discussion as well. At least those complaints that have come into Public Works, to have those geocoded on a map so that we can see where we see the concern areas in District 1 and District 7. So hopefully that'll help narrow down some of the areas where we have issues. Any other discussion or questions from the work group? All right, hearing none, I want to also make an adjustment to the agenda and take time to introduce Joel. Most of you all received your emails with the information from Joel. Joel has been the one that has been a tremendous help in pulling together the agenda and making sure that we stay on task and that we organize the deliverables and all. So I want to take time, because if there's any questions and feedback, most of you all have my email address as well as Joel's email address, but Joel funnels all of that information and makes sure we as a group will stay on task in terms of what we've been asked to do. So Joel, I'll turn the floor over to you to introduce yourself and to also talk about our next steps.
Thank you very much. It's for the benefit of those attendees who have seen my face but not gotten the introduction. My name is Joel Beller. I am Assistant Legislative Officer in the County Executive's Office of Government Affairs, and I've been tasked to be the main staffer on this work group. Just for purpose of clarity, I'm not a member of the work group, but I am here to help Andrew with a lot of the support work that goes into managing the group. And so I think I'll just speak to what we're hoping to cover in our second meeting in late October, which I will be following up today with the work group members on scheduling that meeting. But we have a few topics that we've sort of brainstormed and put together that we think would be appropriate to discuss. So we really want to start with an overview of what currently exists. I think Andrew mentioned earlier that some of her public works team has begun to put together some information on signage, on where there are currently restricted routes, specifically in districts 1 and District 7, and where are the hot spots where the public works team has seen the most constituent complaints of truck traffic going through those restricted areas. I think this will be a piece that, offline I will communicate with Major Landsman to see where the police has been getting those, because we want to include that information in what we're doing. And then the other big piece that rounds that out is where the community sees the issues. So obviously we have some background data on what the community has told us in the past, but we are currently finalizing a community input survey. The county executive mentioned that when he was speaking, where we will, it's about 4 or 5 questions. We're encouraging residents of Districts 1 and District 7 who are in communities where this is an issue for them to take that survey, and we will announce when it is ready to, when that survey is finalized, which we're hoping will be before the end of this week, so that folks can sort of have a formalized way to give us the information that will help us form, a lot of our research on where to put those cameras. And so that is one big piece of what exists, where are the issues, who and what the community sees as the issues. The other big piece that DeAndre has mentioned is an overview of the city program. So this is where, Jeff, I would love to get the name of your contact over email to see if they should be a part of what we're doing. And I think we also would like Jeff and Lewis to sort of have a follow-up to our presentation on the city's program, to identify where the industry sees the things that were done well and things that weren't done well, as part of our second meeting. So those are our 2 big topics, but I wanted to turn it back to the work group members to see if you feel like there are other big topics we should be covering in the second meeting to sort of lay a foundation for our work.
Any suggestions on next steps that Joel just covered? Do you think that's comprehensive enough for the next meeting, or would you like to see something else included?
I think identifying the areas, where we would like to place signage, where the problems are, is step 1, and then maybe one of the early action items is communicating that out to the trucking industry to see if we can get some compliance through education and encouragement on the front end. I'm sure there's a percentage of the drivers that are just ill-informed, but I'm sure there's others that just are know that they're cutting through an area and just using the shortest distance between 2 points. But the more informed we can make them, the better.
I agree.
I think we're pretty comfortable with what you guys have laid out, DeAndrea. Could I bring up just like a more administrative issue for the next meeting, or do you want to first talk about if anybody else has subjects?
Let's see if anybody else has any subjects that they want to add to the agenda for next meeting, or that you think will be helpful to inform us of our deliverables.
Excuse me, it's Jeff Fraley. In some of the major problem areas, it would be nice to reach out to the business owners or the folks that you see in violation to find out why they choose to take these roads.
Okay.
And I think also there's I think the outcomes are going to be different, right? Also, like Jeff brings up a really important point, because I would guess that almost all of the challenges that are being experienced in District 7 are port related, right? And port drivers are overwhelmingly independent contractor, owner operator drivers who are just, leased to actual trucking companies. That's a lot harder population to reach, and will be one that I think, honestly, electronic enforcement is one of the most effective methods to address traffic like that. Whereas the District 1 experience, again, I'm making some assumptions here just based on the commercial activity in and around, is probably more likely to be actual company drivers, and that should be one that should be a little bit easier to connect with, because their drivers are likely employees as opposed to the port drivers, which the driver is making the decision very clearly on what he wants to do and how he wants to operate and the like, as opposed to a corporate driver. So understanding the answer to Jeff's question is probably pretty important to being able to address the problem, for sure, in different locations. So,
Louis and Jeff, I know previously, over the years, there has been both outreach from the Baltimore County Police and from Baltimore County at least on the west side, that has talked to a lot of those trucking companies up there. And I'm going to give credit where credit's due. I mean, the trucking companies do inform their drivers not to take that route, but it's a gamble. We can't have law enforcement out there every single day, 24 hours around a day. So they take that gamble, and it's starting to really take a wear and tear. So, I'm all for reaching out to those trucking companies and having conversations with them, proactive conversations. But they're going to probably tell us the same thing they told me years ago. We have the conversations once a month. And it's my understanding, if one of their drivers does get a ticket, that UPS doesn't pay it, or Ward Trucking doesn't pay it, or whatever other moving trucking companies up there, they don't pay that ticket. The driver is responsible for that ticket. It's taken out of their pay, from my understanding.
So that definitely varies by company, and I think there's a dramatic shortage of truck drivers. Just to be frank, there's a huge shortage of truck drivers nationally, and most companies are dying for drivers. And so in some instances, you may see that be the case, but in others, you might very well see the company absorb that cost because they don't want to lose a potential driver. But that said, I think there's definitely kind of a dual role here, right? There's the company encouraging its drivers and delivering that message, and then there's the enforcement component that the cameras are going to provide, which, in some jurisdictions in the city have been very effective. There's no doubt. St. Helena is the best example, I think, of a community that had a lot of challenges with truck traffic, and the cameras have proven to be very effective in St. Helena with eliminating that. So I think there's two components, absolutely, Pete. So.
So Louis, I think that's a good point that you make. I think that it will be beneficial for the task force to understand from an industry's perspective what has worked in other areas. Not just Baltimore City, but what are some of the best practices that we could recommend to help facilitate? Because it's not only communication and it's not only signage, but there's got to be some things that have worked in some other cities or counties that have been effective. Would you all be able to bring that to the task force to talk about what has worked in other areas?
So I think we could talk, it would be difficult, let me say that, right? Because every jurisdiction is so much different. I think we could certainly do some outreach around, how other areas might have addressed this. The only other jurisdiction beyond Baltimore City that I believe uses electronic enforcement in the country, to my knowledge, is Delaware. I'm pretty sure passed legislation that is statewide legislation, because you only have 3 counties in Delaware, to allow for electronic enforcement of their truck routes, primarily to deal with concerns around the Wilmington area, as I understand it. So it would be difficult, but let me put some thought into that, Andrea, about what we might be able to gather from other locations, because they're not using electronic enforcement. So.
Okay. And I'm hoping the discussion around signage and the type of signage you use will also help us to figure out if we should be doing something different. And of course, there's certain rules about where you put signage on the road and the height of the signage because of eyesight when you're driving in the whole nine. But that needs to be which hence it's a part of Senate Bill 41 in one of the sections. I think that also needs to be a part of the conversation as well, because it's one thing to not know you're not supposed to be down that street, and it's one thing to see that you're not supposed to be down that street and go down that street, but it's another thing if you have the proper signage and you're still going down that street. So I think that all of those things encompass things that we should outline and document and make recommendations on. Yeah. All right, any other feedback from the work group on next steps and whether or not there's other things you want to have as part of this discussion?
I'll just say one thing that I failed to mention earlier. I know we have at least a dozen attendees on here, and I see a few things going in the chat. I think, at least for the purposes of the first meeting, I would encourage attendees with sort of questions that can help us in our research to email us at it's trucktraffic@baltimorecounty.gov. I'll put that in the chat as well. But for now, we are sort of still compiling everything. And if there's anything with a follow-up for the county, an email sent there, we can direct it to the right place to get you an answer. So anything related to this topic, please send it to that email for now.
Send it to that email, and when the survey comes out, we also encourage you all to fill out our survey as well. We also have the information up on the website in particular about this work group and the tasks that we have before us. So yes, please email us and let us know, the questions that you have, and we will actively work on responding to those questions. All right. Anything else from the group? Hearing none.
I had a couple administrative questions.
I'm sorry, Louis, you sure did have an administrative question. Go ahead.
So I know we have a list of all the work group members, but I don't believe we have contact information for all the work group members. If we could get that, and maybe I'm mistaken, because I do want to follow back up with John about his specific items. And then actually, I know I texted Jeff this morning because he was not getting in. He had the same issue, Joel, that I had yesterday, where neither of us got the link sent we didn't see the link come over from Scott. And so just to make sure that we're all getting the link for the next meeting, is that going to come from you directly, Joel, or would that be from Scott as well? Because we both seem to be having some hangups there.
It will be for all the meetings moving forward. Scott helped me set up the first meeting, but I am now, I got a training from him on how to do it moving forward. So it should be coming from me from now on, and we will send that invitation out as soon as we have a time and date finalized, so we can have a little more lead time this time to make sure we work out all those kinks. And I will follow up today with an email with everybody's contact info.
Great, thank you.
I
Joel.
apologize about that, Lewis.
Joe, in the meantime, do you want the emails that are coming through the Office of Community Engagement with constituent concerns about, do you want me to send them straight to the truck trafficking email address, or would you just like me to share them with the members of the workforce group?
For now, I think you can send them to the truck traffic email. If you have, yeah, let me think on that after the meeting on how to get to
All right.
disseminate that information. But for now, send those there, and if there are ones from recently or going forward, and I want to talk to you about maybe the ones from the past, sort of summarizing those if they're more than a month or two old. Like,
excuse me, they're all from why we've been on this call. Like,
gotcha.
email boxes just popping up. They're
Mhm.
emailing me directly. So I just didn't know where you want me to place them so everyone could see the concerns.
Yeah, let's start there, and then we'll find a way to get the information to Lewis to, take some of the more immediate steps we talked about earlier.
All right, sounds good.
Anything else from the work group? Well, let me say, I appreciate you all taking on this effort and being willing to participate and help us achieve these goals. I look forward to working with you all. Of course, Joel will have contact information, and also as we move out this process, if there's any suggestions that you have about the next agenda, feel free to email into the group. Because this is a collaborative effort. It's not just a chairperson effort. It is a collaborative effort, and it's only going to work if we all put the work in to move it forward. So thank you all so much for a great first meeting, and I look forward to talking to you all before the second meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.